It all started on what should have been a quiet Sunday afternoon. I was just trying to check on a property in a neighborhood I've passed through 100 times before. Nothing official, no lights, no uniform, just me off duty. But as soon as I stepped out of my truck, this self-proclaimed HOA officer came marching up like he was on a mission. No hello, no questions, just attitude. He blocked my path, demanded to know what I was doing there, and made it crystal clear he thought he was the one in charge. I tried to keep it calm, respectful. I've dealt with all kinds of people in my career. But then, he did something I didn't expect. Out of nowhere, the guy reaches for his waistband and pulls a weapon. Right there. In broad daylight, I stood still, hands up, heart racing. Not because I was scared. I'd had weapons pointed at me before, but because this wasn't just reckless, it was dangerous. And he had no idea who he was messing with. See, what this guy didn't know is, I **, the real county sheriff. I looked him dead in the eye and said 6 words he never saw coming. But before I tell you what happened next, let's rewind a bit, because there's a whole lot more to this story than one tense standoff. So, here's what led up to that moment. Earlier that week, I got a few tips about strange activity happening around that neighborhood. Nothing major, just reports of someone intimidating residents, acting like they had authority they didn't actually have. It wasn't an official call, just something I wanted to look into on my own time. I've always believed that part of being a good sheriff means showing up, even when no one's watching. This HOA guy had a reputation too. A few locals mentioned he'd been making threats, trying to enforce rules with scare tactics, even flashing something that looked like a badge. But no one had caught it on camera, and no one wanted to file a formal complaint. They were scared, honestly, and I get it. When someone walks around acting like they've got power and a weapon, it puts people on edge. So when I pulled into that neighborhood, I wasn't trying to start anything. I was just walking the property, checking things out, trying to get a read on the situation. But he came in hot, real aggressive, like he'd been waiting for a moment like this. I wasn't even near anyone's house when he showed up, demanding answers, getting in my face. And then he reached for that weapon, not knowing he'd just made the biggest mistake of his day. I didn't flinch when he pulled the weapon. I've been in tougher spots, but I did take a step back and watch his hand carefully. He didn't point it directly at me, but he held it just enough to make sure I saw it, like it was some kind of warning. The problem is, in a situation like that, one wrong move could have changed everything. And the worst part, he had no clue he was threatening a sworn law enforcement officer. Off-duty or not, I still had a badge and training he clearly didn't. What really got me, though, was the look in his eyes. He wasn't nervous. He was sure of himself, like he'd done this before, like he actually believed he had the legal right to patrol the neighborhood, question strangers, and carry a weapon on his hip. And maybe that's what scared me the most, not just for me, but for everyone else who lived there. If he could act like this with someone like me, imagine how he was treating folks who didn't know their rights. As we stood there, the silence between us stretched. A few neighbors peeked out their windows, then quickly pulled the curtains back. I could feel a tension in the air, like this wasn't the first time he caused a scene. One man even stepped out briefly, then hesitated and went right back inside. Nobody wanted to get involved. Meanwhile, I was running through my options. I didn't want to escalate it. No badge showing, no backup, and no body cam rolling. But I was documenting everything in my head, every word, every motion, just in case this turned into something bigger. And in the back of my mind, I was wondering, was this really just one rogue HOA guy? Or was there more going on in this community than I'd been told? Turns out, there were layers to this that I hadn't even begun to uncover. The HOA wasn't just letting him act this way, they were backing him. Quietly. There'd been whispers about selective enforcement, favoritism, even residents getting fined for things that weren't in the rulebook. It wasn't just about one aggressive guy with a fake badge. It was about a system built on fear and silence. And I was right in the middle of it, uninvited but not leaving. He still didn't know who I was, but it wouldn't stay that way for long. I could feel the weight of the moment getting heavier by the second. He was still standing there, gripping the weapon like it gave him power, completely unaware that he was staring down the county sheriff. My instincts were telling me to take control, to shut it down before it got worse. But my gut told me to wait just a little longer. I needed to see what he'd do when he thought he was untouchable. That kind of attitude doesn't come out of nowhere. He started talking again, loud, confident, like he was putting on a show for whoever might be watching. Said I was trespassing. Said I didn't belong there. Threatened to call real law enforcement. That one nearly made me laugh, but I kept a straight face. I asked him calmly if he was with the HOA. He said yes, and even pulled out a badge-looking card that had no legal weight whatsoever. That's when I knew this wasn't just about ego, it was about control. This guy had created his own little empire in that neighborhood, and he was running it with fear and a fake sense of authority. The more he talked, the more details slipped out. Names, past confrontations, things he shouldn't have been privy to unless someone had been feeding him inside info. I was starting to see the bigger picture. This wasn't just about a bad apple. There was a whole rotten branch behind him, and the HOA might have been helping him keep it all covered up. I slowly reached into my pocket and placed my real badge in my palm, hidden from his view, but ready. Not yet. The timing had to be right. Just then, a woman came walking up the sidewalk. She looked nervous, eyes darting between us. She paused, clearly debating whether to keep walking or turn around. I gave her a quick nod. She recognized me, not just as the sheriff, but as someone she'd talked to at a town hall meeting months back. Her eyes widened slightly, and then she kept walking fast. That small reaction told me everything. Word was going to spread. He didn't notice. He was too focused on trying to look tough, pacing back and forth, spouting off HOA regulations he probably made up on the spot. Meanwhile, I could hear the sound of a phone call being made inside one of the houses. Curtains shifting again. People watching, but still too afraid to step in. Then he made his final mistake. He stepped closer, got in my face, and with one hand still on that weapon, he said, "You've got 3 seconds to leave this property or I'll make you leave." 3 seconds. That was the moment, and I hadn't even said a word about who I really was, yet. I stared at him for a second after he gave me that countdown. My mind wasn't on the threat. It was on everything that had led to this moment. The weapon, the fake authority, the way he controlled this neighborhood like it was his personal kingdom. And now here he was, trying to intimidate someone whose job is to uphold real law, not the kind written on an HOA flyer. But just as I was about to speak, something unexpected happened. A black SUV pulled up behind us. Unmarked, tinted windows. The kind that usually means someone important or someone who doesn't want to be seen. The HOA officer looked back and froze for a second. He clearly recognized it. I watched his whole demeanor shift. His shoulders dropped slightly, the hand on his weapon moved away. Not out of fear, but like someone had just walked in who could overrule him. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a sharply dressed man in a suit, mid-50s, clean-cut, calm but stern. He walked up like he owned the place and glanced between the two of us without saying a word. Then he nodded to the self-appointed enforcer and said, "We told you to keep it quiet." That was the twist I didn't see coming. This wasn't just a rogue HOA member going off script. This was something deeper, coordinated. The guy in the suit didn't ask who I was. He didn't demand ID or offer an explanation. He just looked at me like he already knew who I was, why I was there, and how far he was willing to go to protect whatever they were hiding. The officer shifted awkwardly, clearly caught between embarrassment and confusion, like he wasn't expecting his backup to show up just yet. That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just about rules or even power. This was about control and maybe even money. And I had just walked into the middle of something that ran way deeper than HOA drama. I tightened my grip around the badge still hidden in my hand. The man in the suit took a slow step forward and said, "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. You can leave now, or we handle it differently." He didn't say how. He didn't need to. That was the moment I realized I might have walked in alone, but I wasn't just dealing with a neighborhood issue anymore. This was organized, and if they were willing to threaten the county sheriff in broad daylight, who knows what they were really trying to protect. I looked the man in the suit dead in the eye, and in that moment, I decided I was done playing along. I slowly lifted my hand, flipped my badge face up, and held it right between us. His expression didn't change much, but I caught the tiny twitch in his jaw. The so-called HOA officer took a step back, like the ground had just shifted under him. His whole posture changed. Suddenly he wasn't the one in control anymore. "I'm Sheriff Daniels," I said clearly, "and you just pulled a weapon on a county officer." Silence, thick and cold. The guy in the suit took a slow breath and gave me a measured nod, like he knew the game was over, but still had cards left to play. "Well," he said calmly, "that complicates things." He motioned subtly behind him, and that's when I noticed there was a second man in the SUV. Not another enforcer, but someone in the backseat, partially obscured by the glare. He stepped out, clipboard in hand. At first glance, he looked like a legal rep. But as he walked closer, I saw the seal, County Code Enforcement. That's when it hit me. They'd been using that HOA status to push people out of the neighborhood, targeting certain properties with violations that weren't even enforceable, then flipping them through back-channel deals. It wasn't just intimidation. It was property fraud, backed by fake reports, fake authority, and a system of silence. I radioed for backup. The suit didn't stop me. He knew it was done. Within minutes, 2 deputies arrived, and everything shifted. The weapon was confiscated, the HOA enforcer was detained, and the man in the suit, he was silent, but you could see the wheels turning in his head. He knew there'd be an investigation, knew that his name, and the names of whoever else was involved, were about to come out. But here's the twist. Just as we were wrapping up, the woman who had walked by earlier, quiet, unnoticed, approached me. She handed me a flash drive. No words, just a nod. I asked her what it was. She said, "Everything they've been hiding." And that's when I realized this wasn't over. What started as one confrontation on a quiet street was just the tip of something much bigger. Something that's still unraveling. So if you think this story's done, think again.